know.
Right.
To the test on what it was. And then there came a big star in it one time. There came a big star in it one time. They were hearing a very strange noise. We're hearing a very strange noise in the pit on this ventilation road, this road that was going in for ventilation. And do you know what it was? It was the train in Island Station.
God.
Big heavy train taking over, you can pumping on the Island Station, that's what it was. I worked on it myself. I worked on that road there, and John Skelton and myself and the Liam Fergie was on the wee shaft. There's a wee 4-foot shaft that went down through 21 foot of running sand. And there was no way of knowing what way we were going to get down through it or anything else. They got down through it, 21 foot of it. Made a square box, and they took this square box down with them and broke it through. Liam Fergie was on one side of it, and I was on the other side of it, and the two of us broke through the one another. And that was the ventilation for the air would have found the after it went in, like you'd hear, it caused a terrible suction, like, and a terrible draw on it, like, you know.
Prior to that, what was the temperature like down under the ground? Was it the same all the time?
If you weren't working, you were founded, and if you were working, you were smothered.
Right.
You had neither doors nor windows, you see, and till that system went in there was neither doors nor window, and you were breathing out damp air, and that's nearly killed. There's not two living men in the whole thing, only myself. And well, Mickey Forson was in it a while there.
Oh, that's right, Mickey.
You know, Mickey was on a wench, a wee wench for the takeaway. But for the boys that was in, and the old faces and one thing and another. Herbie Holmes. Herbie Holmes and myself. Maybe the only two in it. Only two surviving it. Living in that whole outfit, like. That's hard to believe.
What age would Herbie be now?
Well, Herbie will be 80.
Haven't seen him in a while, but anyway.
No, well, Herbie wasn't well.
No, he hadn't been well.
Herbie hasn't been well.
Well, come here, you started that in 1955 then? You started in there? Because it closed in 1970, you were saying? Or
That's
you left
right.
it in 1970?
That's right.
Did you leave it with it closing? Was that it?
Oh, aye, the whole thing was closed down there to the last till.
And it closed because the seam wasn't viable enough?
No, there's not at all to do with it. It wasn't economical.
Uh-huh.
You see, the whole thing was done, the big pit on her was the instigation of the whole thing. This here was the crop out. Like the coal that we were working in there was the very bottom coal under her pit there.
Yes.
The dairy yard coal, that's what we worked in there, the dairy yard coal.
Mm-hmm.
And that dairy yard coal was the very bottom seam in the big pit under her. And that was at 1,100 foot.
So then did the pit and her stay open after the dairy
The
pit
pit
closed?
under her closed 1928 or something at that time.
Right.
The big pit under her.
Well, why did it close? Because it
Well, yes, a wee bit of politics too. Wee bit of politics, but then you need to be very careful of what you say. Like, you know, they said there was no coal on her was full of coal because our old fella got dressed in the morning and worked on it. He worked on it, and him and me talked about it, and she was supposed to be flooded, and she was supposed to be this, that, and the other, and there never was a man ever came out of it with a wet back. There wasn't a mark of water in it.
There you go.
You know, and the reason why it was closed down, the man that owned that there was Sir Samuel Kelly. And Sir Samuel Kelly owned the coal pits in Newcastle that supplied Ireland, supplied this whole country. And that was the whole purpose for sinking the big pit in her. Those all coal that came in here, as it is just at the present time, all had to be taken in boats and transported in and drew around the country and that sort of stuff. Wait, Sir Samuel Kelly had a colliery in Newcastle had employed 3,000 men, Englishmen. You know, and that up there would have, well, that there was a very modern mine in his time. That pit head in Honor was one of the most modern pit heads there was in Europe. And it was opened by the Queen. It was called after the Queen, the Big Mary. The right name for the Honor pit's the Big Mary.
Right.
And that was after Queen Mary.
Right.
And it was supposed to be on. There was tons. There was no known to the end of the coal in Honor. And it run right to the loch. Right. And that's the yarn they put out. They talked about no coal in it. It was full of coal. It was full of coal, but politics closed it. Sir Samuel Kelly wasn't going to close a colliery in Newcastle and throw 3,000 Englishmen onto the dole for to make things handy and nice for a potty like. No chance. And that's the way it happened. It just was closed overnight like that. And there was two built shafts. That's what I talked about, circulation. What you know, there was two built shafts, and that pit there on her 1,100 foot deep. Two round shafts on two cages going up, one going down, and the other going up. She was very modern on a washing plant. A washing plant where the coal went through and was all washed and an automatic pit head. There wasn't a lack of it in Europe. Oh, aye.
But that closed in 1928.
1928, I think, maybe even earlier.
And the dairy pit was open at that stage and stayed open.
Well, there was always old pits around, old proggy, we called them proggy pits, that got bits of fire clay and stuff like that there. Done a whole lot of work in Kelly's yard. All them gullies and all them sort of stuff was all made out of fire clay and bored and that expanded. That went on over the whole country like that. That was a big surge was coming into the BNU thing at that time, like, you know, and it was all burned and produced in that yard down there, and then it wasn't good enough. And then I got Englishmen over, as per usual, got these Englishmen over for to modernise this and for to speed this thing up and all that sort of stuff. And the first load of pipes and stuff that they drew from there till Belfast, that's where the main end of the work was set down on the bank of a track. And I sat on it whenever but years and on back the whole fucking thing had collapsed. It wouldn't even churn them, and it never was here to live. Old Paddy Cullen there and the wee professor and them boys that born them never had nothing like that, like, you know. Them boys was professional borners. Born all their lives, and nobody ever showed them none. But they had an intelligence for to tell them, you know, that's not right, and no one's not right, and we doing this and we doing that, and they got a system that you could hardly have broke a pipe with a hammer. You know, and that whole thing all went to that. It didn't take much for to create and cause bad publicity in Ireland, like. Very, very fucking little. And that's the way the thing was operated. And the next thing happened, that the yard closed, and the next thing happened was the potteries closed, and big English companies came in and bought them. I forget the name of the place that bought their potteries there. And I think maybe they were the first to buy Kelly's yard too. You know, and the whole system was all gone, and that whole born experience was all lost. See, that experience stayed within the men, because the big end of the men that were working on them things couldn't either read nor write. But they had it in here, you know.
So when you started that in 1955, Jimmy, now what age were you when you started there?
Well, I counted back there.
I've no way, I'm lost. What age were you born then?
I was born in 32 or 33.
I can count forward better than back.
31 maybe. 31 or... See,
you were 24 about.
If any man had asked me what age I was, I couldn't fucking tell him. I'd have to tell someone what my birthday was, and he would have counted it up. and I never really took a big pile of interest in it.
You're around 24 when you went